Excellent. So she's not going to use a microphone.
I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 2024 Social Media Symposium. We've had these symposiums every year, except for during the pandemic, since 2004. So it's our pleasure to bring to you various speakers, various backgrounds, various applications of social media. And today I'm pleased to announce that we have Dr. Karen Freberg. She's a professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville, so she's not too far away. She teaches, researches, and consults in social media strategy, public relations, and crisis communication. She is an award-winning author. Phil Todd uses her textbook in social media. Yeah, you know about that. And yes, he did. He got her autograph earlier. She has written several books, including Social Media for Strategic Communications, Creative Strategies, and Research-Based Applications, and a book, Discovering Public Relations, An Introduction to Creative and Strategic Practices. In addition to academic publications, Freberg has been interviewed for popular press publications such as Adweek, USA Today, The Next Web, Money, US Today College, and Forbes. Very impressive. Before coming to the University of Louisville, Freberg earned her PhD in Communications and Information at the University of Tennessee in May of 2011, and a master's degree in Strategic Public Relations at the Annenberg School for Communications at the University of Southern California in August 2007. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in Public Relations at the University of Florida in August of 2005. Please welcome Dr. Karen Freberg.
Thank you, Professor Reese. Can everyone hear me? Cool, awesome. It's an honor to be here at USI, and I should also start off with my name is Karen, and I'm Karen, but I'm a Karen. This is a nice one, I promise. So it's a pleasure to be here. Oops. Oh, there we go. So I'm really excited to be here. Social media is a passion area for me, both in teaching as well as research and consulting, and I love the fact that it changes all the time. I just wish that some of the platforms would kind of wait until the semester is done, so I don't have to constantly change this. But I'm really excited to talk to you all about some of the current trends that are making waves in the industry for 2024. And so my goal here is kind of using this opportunity as a springboard for future conversations. So anything that I can do on my part to answer any questions, how about with internships, connections, resources, I want to be there for you guys because you guys have a wonderful group of faculty members here as part of the program. And I've had a chance to talk with them and be with them, and it's very impressive with what you guys have to offer here at USI. So introduction. So Professor Reese gave a really kind of introduction. So I am a professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville, so not too far from you all, home of bourbon, horse racing, and fried chicken. So it's also taken me about a couple of years just to pronounce Louisville correctly. So I'm originally from California, so I've had kind of a colorful, educational experience with Florida, Southern Cal, and Tennessee. I'm also a director of our student agency, the Bird's Nest, so I'm really a big believer of engaged learning and building the bridge between academia and industry. Wrote lots of books, speak a lot, consult, so I've had a chance to be brought in on various projects from government to Fortune 500 companies on social media trends, everything from crisis, influencer marketing, and then even analytics. But I'm also a big believer of other fun facts. So I am a dog mom to Amanda Wade. So that is my big bullet for Australian Shepherd. He is currently enjoying his time in Louisville at his boarding. I love traveling. That's one of the things that I'm really a fan of. I love Orange Theory. So when I'm not doing the things that I'm doing for class and work, I'm probably at the gym or at the dog park. And I'm a coffee addict. I think it should be considered to make it food group. And I think working in social media, we need to have a sponsorship, right, for coffee, because that would help us. So that's a little bit about me, but whenever I introduce myself to students, so yeah, this is just some of the experiences that we have for my students. So we're going to be pretty busy in Louisville with that little horse race that happens every first Saturday in May, the Kentucky Derby. And then those are some of my students with Gary Vaynerchuk, so entrepreneur, best-selling author. He has a conference as well. So again, I'm a big believer of engaged learning. So if I can answer any questions about internships, job opportunities. My goal is to empower the future generation of professionals entering the field, so anything I can do on my end to help, all you have to do is ask, and I'll make sure to give my contact information for you all. But as I mentioned before, like my students, I talk about my experience, talk about my books, my research, everything that I've done, but there was actually something that happened almost 2 years ago that kind of changed everything. So this is the only thing that my students are like, Dr. Freberg, this is the thing that we need to, talk about. And it actually, I have to thank social media for this opportunity. So one other fact about me is I have a friend. You might recognize this gentleman over here. That is Mr. Deadpool himself, Ryan Reynolds. So short story, it all came through social media. So I've been very active as a professor on social media across different platforms, including Twitter X. I'm not sure what Elon Musk is calling it these days. I'm still calling it Twitter. He's calling it X. Let's just say it's complicated. But I've been a fan of Ryan's work, especially with what he did with the Peloton ad. So in 2019, I was talking about, like, this is a great case study, I need to share with the students, and then I got a notification that Ryan Reynolds started following me on Twitter, and I thought, oh, this is a bot, not Ryan. Then I realized at that time that was, he had a verified check mark next to his name. I'm like, oh my gosh, keep calm, Karen, be cool. I wasn't at all. But because of social media, because it's a hub of communication and building relationships, we were able to have ongoing conversations on Twitter until summer of 2021. Ryan slides into my DMs and said, Karen, anytime you would like to have me come to your class to speak, I'm up for that. Cue freak out number 2. So he basically had 2 stipulations 2 years ago. He wanted to Zoom bomb the class and surprise them, and he wanted to talk to the students primarily. So this kind of shows you never know who you're going to connect with on social media. The possibilities are endless. And Phil, for your students who are using my book, Ryan also has my book. So 6 degrees between you and Deadpool. That's pretty cool, right? So he is behind the screen. So that's the one thing that my students ask is like, okay, when is Deadpool coming to our class? I'm like, I don't know. Hopefully we can bring him to Louisville. That would be amazing. Maybe he'll come to USI. That would be pretty cool. So kind of shifting gears in terms of current state of social media, I think we are we're basically experiencing an interesting time in social media. I love the fact that it's constantly changing all the time. But at the same time, I'm like, it's constantly changing all the time. There's something new, different, and challenging to overcome. But there are some things that we should know about. So one of the things that we're hearing a lot about is this concept of social first. So we're kind of seeing a shift in the PR, communications, media landscape where people are realizing that individuals are naturally going to social media for the first stop to check out updates, find out what's going on in the news, make connections, build relationships, engage with different parts of the community. And so this is a concept that a lot of brands, including Taylor Swift, Jack Harlow is, of course, a Louisville fan and native. Here's with them, KFC, and then, of course, I love Savannah Bananas. They are definitely one of my favorite accounts to follow. But we're seeing individuals, brands, partnerships, and teams basically embrace the social first capability. And so that is one thing that we're basically seeing in 2024 as kind of the standard. Duolingo, how many of you follow Duolingo on TikTok? Yeah, so their global head of social media basically said, we are a social first brand. And they were one of the first to kind of really distinguish themselves as that. So I think it's something that we're going to see, again, more brands, more individuals kind of focus on saying, this is the way that we are going. And so the current state that we have here is a social first culture-driven community algorithm era. So that's a lot of jargon, a lot of buzzwords that from people outside of our industry might be like, what are we talking about? So in concept, we are seeing a social first perspective, but the algorithm that we're seeing on different platforms, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or with all the other different platforms, they're not focusing primarily on your demographics, your age, location, etc. They're focusing on what content are you connecting with and which communities are you being part of. So that's kind of a shift that we're kind of seeing here. And the other opportunity that we have here is, again, communication is very easy right now. We have the ability to connect with anyone, from our classmates to our professors, even having access to Ryan Reynolds. I would not have been in that situation having Ryan in my class if it was not for social media and building those relationships. But I also feel too that there's additional challenges, and I'm going to raise some of those here. With every opportunity, every positive feature that comes up, there's always the challenge side. So that's one of the things that I look at, because my background is in crisis communication as well. So I'm always thinking, this is great, but what could go wrong? You know, so you gotta have a balanced perspective here. And technology has broken down the time and location for a lot of things, but at what cost? You know, in terms of handling a crisis, instead of the traditional 24 hours in terms of getting a response out, we have maybe a couple of minutes, an hour, max, maybe, before people change the narrative. So those are things that we have to kind of be mindful of as social media professionals. And this is a resource. I will have a list of resources for you all to kind of bookmark and share. Again, I wouldn't be a professor if I didn't assign homework. I mean, but that's kind of what I do. But I'm here to provide as much resources as possible. So one resource that I literally bookmark on my computer as a go-to every quarter is this report that comes out from Mel Water and We Are Social. We Are Social is a global agency, and they do a massive research depth every quarter. So January, April, and I believe July, and then October. They basically do like a 300, 400 slide deck, basically on the research of what is going on in social media right now. And they do this worldwide and then break it down to country. So this is kind of a snapshot of what we are looking at right now. There are over 5 billion social media user identities in the total population. That's a lot of, user profiles. But we're looking also at the growth in terms of social media users, and then of course, how growth is compared to age cohort. So if you want to get a solid group of research to kind of back up if you're doing a social media proposal, if you're doing a research analysis, this is a good report to kind of give you a sense of what's happening in the world. And if you're interested in doing international study abroad programs, having this report to look at the social media trends in that specific country that you're going to is really important. So I would highly recommend looking at that. But this kind of gives you a snapshot. This was in January. They haven't, of course, released their latest report in April. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll probably see that as well. So what's currently happening in social media? So it's matured. I remember when I started at the University of Tennessee, and I said, you know what, I really want to pursue social media. I want to become a professor that teaches social media and do research. I had a few professors that said, Karen, that is bad. It's going to go away. You're never going to get a job. You're never going to get tenure and promotions. You're never going to be known for teaching social media. It's amazing how things happen in just a short period of time. So it is matured. It is constantly evolving, though. It is definitely a solid base within social media. The fact that you all have classes in social media is tremendous. And so I remember talking with Professor Reese, a while ago. Like, I remember seeing that USI was one of the first programs to really offer courses in social media, which is really exciting for you all. But it's definitely in a state of flux and evolution. And so teaching social media is never dull, because there's some times where I'm kind of like, oh, I had a whole lecture on this one platform that goes away, like in a day or so. So you have to kind of be agile and adjust accordingly. It has grown substantially, of course. And the thing that I think is really great about social media is the fact that there's so many job opportunities. But the challenge is that you see with a lot of these job opportunities is, one, the roles and expectations have grown. And I love job ads that say, we have 30 years of experience with social media. And they pay entry level. I'm like, what's that price? So it's always interesting to kind of see what people think of, or they want the attention sink. So it's important to kind of look at like who is writing the job ads and social media and what's on it. So that's something to kind of be mindful of. But again, it's evolved. The domination of platforms has changed. So I remember when I first got on social media, Facebook was where it was at. Then my students tell me, Dr. Freberg, that's not where it's at now. But in certain cohorts and certain communities, it still is. but the domination of different platforms and focus in the spotlight has changed. So it was Facebook, then YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and so we're kind of seeing kind of an evolution even here to kind of see the nominations, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with TikTok with the potential ban. So again, never a dull moment. You have to be adaptive and agile, to be in this industry. But I think the biggest thing here too is this goes to positive circumstances in social media, but also challenging ones. When you're looking at social media, if you're doing any kind of storytelling, media engagement, crisis communication, announcing any new initiatives, one thing that is universal in positive circumstances as well as negative is you want to control the narrative. You want to own your story. This goes for brands, clients, and organizations, but also for you individually as well, for your own personal brand on social media. You want to be able to highlight and control that and tell the story that you want to, because no one is going to tell your story better than you, but also you don't want anyone else to control the narrative. And I have an example of how that's happened right now in a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. So what I'm going to go over now are some trends. Some things that I'm kind of seeing here. I mean, one of the things that I get a lot of questions on is, Karen, what is your prediction for where social media is going to be in a year from now, or 2 years? And I kind of use the emoji like, who knows? I wish I had a magic ball to kind of say where we're going, but there are still some trends that you're able to kind of pick up on. And the perspective that I have is simply tools are going to change, but human behavior doesn't. There's still going to be people who are going to be creating communities that want to be entertained, that want to feel part of an experience, they want to have value of some sort, they want to showcase their own story. So if you understand the human behavior aspect, there's going to be still things that won't necessarily be surprising. But then there are things that you see come up and you're like, I did not have that on my bingo card, but here we are. That's the beauty of social media. So one of the things that we're finding out from brands right now on social media is that it's the most important and valuable currency that we're seeing right now is attention. And it's not just attention in the sense of you spending time on one app or following, one creator on one platform, but attention is what else you're doing in your day. You have 24 hours in a day. So if you are a brand, let's say Starbucks, you're not only getting people's attention on social media, but you're competing with Netflix, Spotify, podcasts, school, social life, all of those capture attention. So we have to kind of be mindful of what we're doing here. And relevancy comes with a constant engagement and research and alignment with audiences. So research is actually one of the most important skills that we still have today in social media, along with writing. So when I tell my students that, really have to be written? I'm like, yes, you need to understand how to not only gather insights, but how to apply them creatively and systematically and strategically. And so creativity is to basically entertain and engage. So you can have the most entertaining concept ever, but if you're not engaging with your community, just pushing out content without that push-pull kind of message strategy, you're going to miss out on some incredible opportunities. And so what I want to go through is kind of some examples of individuals and brands that really kind of capture what we mean by attention. And so I have to give props to Brian and his team. So if I had any recommendation is if you have a chance to follow Maximum Effort, that is the production company that was behind the viral Peloton ad and a lot of the different viral efforts and campaigns that Brian Rose has done. This is his agency. So this was his first venture to say, I'm going to go into advertising and marketing. So this series of photos happened earlier in the football season because, of course, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were dating. But one of the clients that Maximum Effort was working with was State Farm. And one of the things that they realized is everyone kind of found out that there was something going on with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift when she was being filmed with Travis Kelce's mom. So they thought, that is prime viral real estate. How do we go about creating a moment of sparking a conversation that is relevant and appropriate and feels natural? So what they did is, one game, they placed Jake from State Farm right there next to Kelsey, and everyone was like, what is Jake from State Farm doing with Kelsey? And so everyone was kind of talking to pretty buzz, but that all came, people were paying attention to it. They were paying attention to the game, but they were also having a conversation related to State Farm. So this was a placement that they did. As a result, I actually have a friend that works at State Farm as a digital analyst. I said, well, what were some of the things that you found from this interaction? They said, well, they crashed their website, based on this. I'm like, well, Swifties know how to support brands, but two, they said they actually got a lot more engagement, a lot more followerships, but then also signups for inquiries and leads. So that's the big thing about social media, is that if you can have the best viral campaign, but if you don't tap into communication of business objectives for business, especially for senior management and senior leaders, you won't be able to kind of showcase your impact and what you're going to do. So this was a case that I thought it grabbed attention, but it also tapped into key metrics that a lot of people outside of social media were like, okay, we see the value of this. This is a story. This is unique. Now, there were other people that kind of tried to follow suit here. People were like, well, that was so 2023, So if you try to do something to capture attention and then try to repeat it, it may or may not necessarily work. So that's something to keep in mind. I have to go with the state of it there. So one thing that we see right now in social media is you do not want to follow the norm. And what I mean by that is if you're seeing everyone do the same thing on social media, you want to kind of slightly vary from that, because what does that do? If people see someone going off a tangent, you don't want to go fully off the tangent, because then that, could be missing opportunities. Just slightly enough that people are like, okay, that's different. What's going on? I'm interested in that. That's something new, something fresh. So the Tomato Bananas have basically created Banana Bowl. They really were one of the first teams that really understood not only the attention strategy that is needed to be effective on social, but they were able to create content, engagement, and experiences that had not been seen at the minor league baseball. And since then, they're doing their world tour. They sold out the baseball stadium in Houston, 41,000 plus people. I don't know about you, but besides the World Series, I don't know of a game that has sold out like that. So their tickets are insane. I believe last time I read, there's a 500,000 person waiting list to attend their games, but they want to keep it small, exclusive. Why? It generates attention, right? It generates interest and FOMO, like I've got to be there, I've got to be part of this experience. And so it's really an interesting kind of case study to kind of look at, okay, how do we capture attention? Can you replicate this if you're another minor league baseball team? Yes, but people will be like, well, that's the Savannah Banana strategy. But if you took their insights and what they were doing and apply it and creatively, uniquely integrate it to your own industry, your own brand, your own community that fits your overall values, it can work. So it's about thinking strategically and creatively into coming up with new approaches and ideas. I love Sesame Street too. So what I like about attention grabbing is sometimes jumping into a conversation with a simple tweet, or X, I'm not sure what Elon Musk is calling tweets nowadays with X, but Elmo basically went viral for basically talking about emotional well-being, having a conversation, and using the platform on social media to go forward. And so this case captured a lot of attention because people were like saying, yeah, I don't know, I'm not doing good, or hey, Elmo, this is what I'm feeling right now. So there's a lot of engagement because people were resonating with that experience. So, and I actually had a couple of colleagues and professors who were like, yeah, that's one of our students who was part behind the voice of Elmo. So there's definitely opportunity still to go viral on social media for doing and tapping into what is resonating with your audience, what are people talking about, but also aligning it with your platform. And so again, there's a lot of strategy, there's a lot of things to kind of think about. But if you're able to capture your attention with your audience to create something that is meaningful, that resonates with them, and that they're willing to share publicly, it can basically capture a lot of engagement that way. And so my favorite topic, crisis. Things happen all the time, traditional and emerging. And so my area in my dissertation, my PhD studies is actually social media crisis communication. And I went into this area because I don't not only find it fascinating, but I always feel like, well, I will always have a job, because there's always going to be something going on, or things that I need to do to help prepare to make sure that things don't go wrong. But my rule of thumb is when I tell my students, when you think you've seen it all, wait a minute, you'll probably see something that you didn't have on your bingo card. Some of the historical, traditional practices of crisis communication still apply for social media today in 2024. But there's new emerging trends and issues and types of crises that we need to pay attention to from a social media perspective. And so that's kind of where, if you are interested in problem solving, being prepared, being calm under pressure, being forward thinking in terms of what's coming up next, this could be an area of socialization that you can go into. And also, again, you will always have a job. And so a lot of times when my students are like, yeah, when they go into social media, they're like, Dr. Freberg, it's unicorns and rainbows and sprinkles. Like, it's happy, we get to do some amazing campaigns, everything is all fine and good. And then I tell them, well, in reality, it's like sometimes you have a social media manager or a PR person or a communications professional, and you're basically in this meeting saying, yeah, this is fine. This is fine. Like, things are happening, we're fine. Social media crises are a different type of crisis. Because with traditional crises, it's an unexpected event that basically causes a lot of emotions and uncertainty. Social media crisis is something that sparks online and then just basically goes viral, then goes and translates offline. So there's a lot of different specializations and characterizations, but I'm going to talk about a few of them right now. So are there any cans of saying yes to the dress of the reality show on TLC? Yeah, okay. So this is a wedding dress designer, Haley Page. So Haley Page was, an influencer. She had a pretty large following on social media. Became really popular on reality shows for wedding dresses. So I know this case because I actually served as an expert witness for a legal case. But this is a crisis because it's one of those that has come through social media that you're like, wow, we're able to do personal branding, we're able to kind of be an influencer and creator. This is a case of what could go wrong, what could happen. So what happened with Haley Page is before, she had 2 contracts with her wedding house, employer. The first contract she had was before social media policies were really in place. So she was able to build up the following, do influencer deals, partnerships, etc. The wedding house, her employer, basically was like, wow, okay, Haley, we want to revisit your contract. We want to basically add in that we own your personal social media accounts because you were part of our brand as an employee. We gave you the platform to become an influencer. So Haley, as a result, said, no, I quit. I'm not signing this contract. What happened next would be surprising you. So the employer decided, we're going to sue you for your personal social media accounts. And they were able to convince a judge in New York that because Haley Page, as a creator, on Instagram, if you switch your personal account to a business account, you're able to get more analytics, right? And have more partnerships and features, whatever. So her employer argued to the judge that because it's a business account, that means they own it. What do you think happened? She lost ownership of her Instagram. She had to turn it over to the business. So that was where I was brought in. And I wanted to be part of this case because I felt the ramifications of any business, corporation, entity, if you're an employee, you build up a following that can say, yes, we have your social media accounts, your personal social media accounts. So as a result, this was a case that happened during the pandemic. So going through deposition with lawyers, via Teams was an experience. Brought me back to the good old days of my dissertation defense. But as a result, Haley Page had to change her name for her brand. So she's still in the wedding dress industry, and I believe just this year, her employer that was suing her filed for bankruptcy. So it was a long drawn out process for the lawsuit. But again, I bring this up because these are new challenges that we haven't seen necessarily on social media, but with personal branding, with creators, influencers, this is something that we have to be mindful of. And then, of course, everyone is talking about Kate Middleton. Again, I do not have this on my bingo card. So this video, well, not video, this photo sparked a lot of interesting conversations related to social media, photo editing, identifying AI components, and now, again, we're seeing a lot of, like speculation of where the princess is. So this is, again, kind of a key lesson of controlling the narrative. Having other individuals share the story, share their conspiracy theories, share their thoughts, has really driven a lot of this conversation where the palace and the royal family have kind of lost the ability to control. So it'll be interesting. Again, this is an evolving case study that I think will be interesting to kind of see play out over the next few weeks. But it is something that we have to kind of be mindful of, especially with photo editing, et cetera. But also what that means if you share this on social media, how that deals with, your view as a source, which Kensington Palace has had to address. Now, I'm going to bring something home to local Kentucky. So we are known for a little horse race, just a little horse race, the Kentucky Derby, which is at Churchill Downs. We have a big horse race. It's 150th, so a big milestone. So Churchill Downs is going and unveiling a $200 million renovation of their stage, just a little renovation. But one of the things they announced was their new paddock area was going to be announced and sponsored and named for Sports Illustrated, iconic sports magazine. So this announcement happened in January of this year. What also happened in January? They laid off Sports Illustrated laid off all of their writers and staff from the magazine. So this is where, with the student agency that I work with, so we're working with Churchill Downs and Kentucky Derby, we were like, okay, proactive measure. We wanted to monitor on social media and the traditional media to see, everyone was talking about the sponsorship layout, but we wanted to see, are people making the connection between the sponsorship layout, Sports Illustrated layoffs with basically sponsoring the Kentucky Derby. And we wanted to be proactive in sharing those information points with the team. And we were able to do that. We are using a tool called TrueScope. So we were able to monitor reports, and ultimately no one did make that connection, but we wanted to be proactive about that. So sometimes in crisis communications, even to this day in social media, you have to be proactive, listen, monitor, and kind of think about how can I make sure that our client, organization, or ourselves is proactive in handling kind of crisis like this. So this was something that kind of hit home with my students a little bit. So again, never a dull moment in the field. Now, the other thing that I've talked a little bit about is culture driven. So we need to understand kind of the nature of influencers, creators, and also subcultures. And so there's one person that I would recommend you guys following on LinkedIn. His name is Matt Higgins. He is part of the Blue Hour Studios group, and they basically focus on Gen Z and subcultures. So I got connected with Matt a while ago through a mutual friend, and their work is fascinating in terms of what they're dealing with. So what this basically means, instead of looking at audiences based on age, location, race, gender, we are basically going to look at audiences from which subculture are you interested in? What content do you resonate with? What's on your For You page? How do you identify yourself based on your interests? What do you like, what do you don't like? And so aligning yourself with brand values and purpose and voice, you're able to make a connection. So it's about kind of looking at it from a culture standpoint, kind of being able to be participating in these communities, not necessarily owning them. So there's a lot of culture-driven elements here. So another favorite brand of mine that I have now, I have a lot of food brands. I'm a foodie too. So I think whenever I go to restaurants or order things, I'm doing research. But one of the companies or brands that I really like right now is Sweet Green. So it's a salad-based company, but the social media manager used to be the social media manager for Auntie Anne's pretzels. And I think it's very fascinating for consumer-based products, for social media, what they're able to do. But Sweet Green has really, in the last couple of weeks, really revitalized themselves as being a brand that they're like, we want to tap into culture. We want to tap into opportunities. And so what they found is that there's a celebrity in New York that basically was wearing this kind of set of a hoodie, socks, green shoes, and they were carrying a Sweet Green bag. And so this is where listening and kind of being part of the culture is so important, because you're able to capture these moments. Some brands are going to miss this completely and miss an opportunity to kind of engage in a real-time moment. But Sweet Green realized, okay, we have the ability of making something fun out of this experience. And so they were listening, monitoring, and they were able to give the go-ahead to the social media team to create something that really kind of tapped into a real-time moment. And so they're a brand that I look at as being really innovative and coming up in the space. I also love Liquid Death. I think their marketing, their branding, their voice, their overall kind of brand archetype is innovative. And they really have tapped into their subcultures with the different audiences that they look at, and they really own the narrative. One of the things too that a lot of people have kind of seen, and this is kind of where I feel like being in social media for a while, kind of see some kind of, ebbs and flows in these examples. And so I remember when Wendy's became very viral with their roasting, tweets and stuff, people are like, well, maybe we should do that as well. But if it's not fitting your brand voice or aesthetic or archetype, it won't go over that well. And so Liquid Death and Duolingo are two brands that people are like, we need to be more like Liquid Death. But really, do you share the same characteristics? Do you share the same voice? What would people think if you switch gears and try to do something new? It takes time, it takes understanding your community to see, is this worthwhile? Is this something we should do or not? And so, but I think with Liquid Death, as a drink, they have done this pretty well. And then another brand that is actually known for Louisville, it's headquartered in Louisville, is Alani Nu. My students are pretty much like, whenever they're going to class, they either have coffee or they have Alani Nu. And so it's very popular on college campuses, but in terms of understanding cultures, they're also, they were owned by, of course, the fitness influencer Katie Kern, who does a lot of fitness, content creation on their own, et cetera. They came out with a lot of different partnerships, including with Kim Kardashian. And so what they were realizing is as they're expanding and growing, they're kind of formulating and strategically thinking, how can we Facebook formulate these strong partnerships? So what they've done is, as they've been growing, is they're looking at, okay, which communities, which creators, which influencers should I be a part of? So they've been launching new creators, new partnership alignments, so they're doing that to fit relevancy into their brand with the up and coming generation. So these are just some brands that I think have done, an effective job of kind of capturing that culture-driven initiative for social media. Now, so for the future, what is the future related to social media? How do we keep up with the trends and challenges, lead the path as professionals in the industry? So there's, I think, a really great opportunity for you all in this room to really be part of something special, because this is a very interesting time in social media where we have a lot of opportunities to really venture out into the world, to be leaders in shaping where the field is going and where we want it to go, and kind of share our perspective, share our story, provide knowledge into the overall community. It might be overwhelming at first to do that, but if you do a little bit every day, if you kind of build upon it, take steps, you never know where you're going to be. I'm amazed, like when I've always been a fan of technology, but if you would have told me back when I was in undergrad at the University of Florida that I'd be doing what I'm doing, I'd be like, really? That's so cool. Because you just never know where this field will take you. There's a lot of opportunities. It's just limitless. What you want to do is certain things. And so these are kind of universal best practices, or what my students at Louisville call Frebergisms, that I want to impart on you as you kind of venture out to become leaders in the field, be voices of professionalism and ethics, for the future, and really kind of lead this field forward. So my best tips. I think one of the things that's missing is social media is empathy and kindness. We have the ability to communicate with everyone, but sometimes we forget there's people on the other side of the screen reading what we're posting. Cyberbullying, information, all of that negative stuff. We need to be aware that there are individuals that have real feelings, real emotions, and real experiences behind what we're looking at. So your actions speak volumes for your personal brand. So what you want to be mindful of as a professional for your clients, for your business, your employer, and even for yourself, kindness doesn't cost anything. If you are there to help someone, provide resources, that builds trust, that builds relationships, that ultimately creates opportunities for you that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. So it's important for us to, in this world today, in social media where a lot's happening, we might be kind of experiencing the dog and the fire meme, but if we take an approach of kindness and leave it up to the understand, like maybe there's a lot of things going on that we don't know about this community or what we're feeling, but if we lead with kindness and generosity, we can make it, the world a little bit better and with that impact. And I think that's something that I would encourage you all to think about in social media as you practice. I would say, the big thing too for students and for you all is to advocate and share your impact. Again, more than ever, everyone talks about you need to have a personal brand, you need to have a voice in social media, you need to have a presence, but you also have to be your best spokesperson. No one knows your story better than yourself. And you don't want anyone else to control your story or brand because you never know what they're going to say about you. And no one knows you more than you. So I know when I first started, people were like, well, personal branding, share your story, that's self-aggrandizing, that's self-promotion. I don't want to self-promote myself. You do want to, there's a line between some of these social media gurus who actively share everything under the sun, thinking, I'm all that, and bad chips, but they have no evidence. But if you have evidence, if you have a good point of view based on your experiences and your thought process, share that. Share that openly. It's about taking that initiative and kind of being confident of being able to share what your thoughts are and what you're able to bring to the table. Because, again, you never know who's going to be reading your work or what opportunities that may come up. So I had Ryan come to class, but most of my speaking engagements, most of the brand partnerships and connections that I've been able to make on social media have come from sharing the experiences, sharing my perspective, and bringing something of value to the table. And everyone has value to share. You just need to be able to share that with the world. Which kind of basically goes to my next point. So, again, with value, starting out with sharing things you're interested in. If there's a podcast that you like, if there's a book that you feel like, wow, this is really cool, or if there's a community that you feel is providing value, share that with others, because if you are viewed as a resource, people are going to come to you and they're going to subscribe to your channels, they're going to follow you, connect with you and say, hey, this is an opportunity that I'd love for you to be part of because this is up your wheelhouse. And I think you just never know what can come about it. And so my students, a lot of times they're like, oh, Dr. Freberg, what happens if people steal my work or steal my ideas? Big issue, right? And so it happens, unfortunately. But I tell my students they can steal your work, but they can't steal your brain, unless you're Frankenstein, and that's like a whole other conversation, right? So, but you want to share your perspectives and ideas, again, and you want to be generous with your resources because, again, no one can steal your brain, the way that you approach things, the way you think, and it's important to kind of build up that repertoire where people are able to see that you're willing to do that. They're willing to build upon that. So when I first started, I was sharing blog posts, I was sharing resources, because at the same time when I was starting, no one was sharing their resources, and I thought I'm going to do something different. And as a result, that's led to speaking opportunities, that led to the opportunities to write textbooks, which I was the student back in Florida that was like, I have to write this 5-page paper. This is too much. This is too long. And now look what happened, 400+ pages later for books. So things change. And then I don't know how many of you are looking for jobs or internships right now, but one thing that I talk a lot about with my students in terms of social media today is the marketplace is competitive. There are a lot of layoffs, unfortunately, in the tech space, but there's a lot of people who want to vie for similar positions, right? But I think you all here at USI are in good shape because you have a great faculty base, you have a great program, you're taking real world classes that will prepare you for the workplace. So you're in really good shape. But when you are networking, this is one of the things that I want to do here with students in my own classes. I tell them, you want to go for the soft sell approach, not the hard sell. And what that means is, if you're looking for a job, an internship, or if you want an opportunity to speak to someone, you don't DM them on LinkedIn saying, yo, I need to get an internship, help me out. Without any prior interactions or relationships, because what people will do, they'll delete that message completely. But if you build a relationship, if your dream company, let's say, I know a lot of my students really want to work for, I'm trying to think of a brand that everyone's like really excited about. They're like, oh my gosh, this would be a dream company to work for. Adidas, we're an Adidas school. So I tell them, okay, look at the people who are working at Adidas, who have a strong partnership with Google on LinkedIn. Do your research. Start talking about Adidas. Look at their campaigns. Engage with the brand's profiles on social media. And if you are looking at individuals who work at Adidas, reach out to them and say, you know what, I'm very passionate about Adidas. I'm studying social media at this school. How did you get to your position? I'd love to learn more about your journey. That's a little bit better, right, than asking for the hard sell. I mean, if you want to show initiative but not like focus on connecting with someone in social media just because of the job title, because people see that from a mile away. So that's where building a relationship, building that connection over time, it may take time. It may take a couple months, years. So when I shared that story with Ryan, we connected first on Twitter in 2019, and he came to speak to my class in 2022. That's 3 years almost. But relationships take time. If you're willing to be patient but persistent, things will pay off. And again, I mentioned homework. So I'm going to make sure that you guys have access to these slides. But again, I would not be a professor. I didn't sign homework. And I know that you guys are all going to get A's, right? So I'm a big believer of sharing resources. So I have some newsletters. So there are some newsletters that are free. I like free, but they're very valuable. So there's two newsletters that I can subscribe to. One is Future Social. So Future Social focuses on kind of identifying case studies, like this newsletter is written by Jack Appleby, but what he does is he kind of breaks down the strategy and creativity of a particular case study. So recently he talked about McDonald's campaign with anime, really kind of broke down how that played out on social. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop for kind of looking at case studies and social media, that's one. I would recommend if you're interested in influencers and creators, Leah Haberman has one called In Case You Missed It newsletter. So she goes over talking about the updates in social media, but also what's happening in the influencer creator space. So that's one of her niche areas. Social Geek Out, Matt Navarra, he used to run social for BBC in the UK. So he is like one of the go-to experts in social media. He has a Facebook group, newsletter, and a paid WhatsApp group. So if you want to look at someone who's breaking news before everyone else, that's not going to work. And then the information is also a publication that has a lot of really good detailed reports and articles. Now, additional resources, I love additional certifications, so HubSpot, Hootsuite, Meltwater have all free certifications. But then I also have Social Media Today, Adweek, I have the Meltwater, and we are social Meltwater digital reporter, both product packages that comes out every quarter. But then if you are interested in podcasts, I know my students, they're like, I'm obsessed with podcasts. I'm like, okay. So there's a really cool new podcast right now called How I Post It. It is by Bree Reynolds. So she's a social media manager at Lyft. So this podcast interviews people behind the brands that do kind of the iconic posting. So she interviewed this person that actually started the whole trend with Wendy's roasting people on Twitter. So it's fascinating. It's important for us to kind of see who are the people, because again, these brands have a team of individuals or a team of one maybe posting this stuff. So it's a cool podcast to kind of see how their journey has come about. Making the Brand podcast, if you're interested in pop culture and social media, so Brand Planning hosts that. That is an awesome podcast. So she goes over the details of Taylor Swift. She loves Backstreet Boys. So if you're really into that, you guys will be besties. And then Breaking and Entering podcast focuses on how to break and enter the advertising and creative field. So if you're interested in that realm, there's a lot of social media individuals who are interviewed there. So lots of resources, lots of homework, but it's fun homework. It'll help, in your journey for a social media professional. And then I have my contact information. So as I said before, I want this to be used as a jumping off point. So any questions, anything that I can do to help you all out, I'm here to help. So my email is just karen.freberg@louisville.edu, and I'm pretty much on social media across the board, everywhere, even TikTok, which of course surprises my students. I'm like, hey, professor in social media, but I'll be here as a resource to help you guys out. So That's all I have today, so I will, if you have any questions if you guys have, so thanks. Questions? I promise, yeah, I'm a nice parent, so I won't call the ladies or anything.
So in one of my classes, we read two of your articles from around 2013. And we were just kind of curious, how, as you said, social media is very recently, very rapidly. And at that time, we were saying things about using multiple platforms at the same time. And so now kind of one of our questions was, would it still be the best route to potentially have on multiple platforms or pretty much one? And if so, what would you recommend for like?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, so, 2013, or as my students call those really old articles, so, yes, yeah, I would say it really depends on the situation. So, I would say that if a crisis happens, let's say on TikTok, you would want to go to the original place. But I would back up saying, okay, if there's conversations, and that's kind of where listening and monitoring comes forward. If things are happening on LinkedIn or Twitter, you want to be mindful to say, do we need to jump into that conversation? But ultimately, if something happens on a different platform, you want to go address it there, because that's where it started. But you want to kind of be mindful today of like, okay, if we were to address this right now, where would we go? And so case in point, so this actually involves the original Dr. Freberg. My mom was also a professor, so she's the OG Dr. Freberg. But her university had a little bit of a crisis. And did anyone see on TikTok the Cal Poly dorm St. Patty's Day dorm storing videos? Homework assignment. So that's my hometown, and that's my mom's university. So there were 7,000 students that had a really good time for St. Patty's Day right before their final exam, so I don't know about that. But they destroyed a couple of their dorms, and these videos went viral. But the university did not address it. Well, they went viral on TikTok. They did not have a crisis message on TikTok. They just had an email that was sent to students. That is reaching certain students, but the president could have done something to address what they were doing, how that faced and how that came forth. So that would have been my recommendation. So if you want to, go see how they responded that way in that crisis, they could look at some lessons. So, but things have changed a bit since 2015, which is 11 years ago, which seems like yesterday, but it's not.
That's the second question.
Okay.
For comments, would you recommend people leave comments on to engage with the community to escalate the conversation? Or if there's a lot of negative comments, reply to those, delete them, ignore them?
That's a great question, because I think what you want to do is be at the forefront of kind of making that decision too, and having a set of guidelines for your policy to say, okay, we will not tolerate X, Y, Z type of comments, like, negative, threatening, blah, blah, blah. If you have that set up, and if you see comments that are basically going against those violations, then you can take those down. But the issue that people have is when they close off comments and they're like, you don't want to address this. And here's the thing too, when people think, oh, we close comments, no one can comment engage. It's like, there's this little thing called screenshot. There's a whole stitch video. There's a recorded video that you then repost. So it's important to kind of say, okay, we're going to embrace the challenges. We're going to embrace what we need to do. So it will be hard at first, but it's better to be upfront and not try to hide. Because if the internet finds out that you're trying to hide something, one, they'll make an additional story of it, but two, they're going to engage with you more. They're like, ooh, you can process this. I'm going to engage with you more. And that can create even a bigger crisis. So I've had kind of those conversations with a few people that I talked to. You want to put it on?
Okay,
No.
thanks though.
Like there's ways in which you can respond that we need to be proactive. And so that's kind of where, again, that would be great insights and great experience for you guys, to give advice to your clients, because our businesses are like, some people don't really know how to address. Like, what happens if your brand is part of the cancel culture? What would you do? I mean, a lot of people have like, oh my gosh, if you're able to calmly give them steps, like here's how we would respond, here's the messaging that we would want to do, and here's our best approach. Reducing the level of uncertainty, especially with something new, like some of these issues, will be great. Great questions.
Obviously, there's a lot of discourse on going on right now with TikTok and the shutdown. I'm kind of curious on what you think. If this were to happen, if it were to shut down, what do you think would happen to the audience? Where would they go? And do you think there's any other apps that would emerge later to take its place?
That's a great question. So first off, I think one, I've seen a lot of petitions to bring Vine back. Everyone's like, bring Vine back, you know, if that happens. I would say that the bigger issue is, okay, they ban TikTok, what's next? You know, how do you evaluate one brand to be banned versus Facebook, Twitter? And so there'd be a lot of questions on the legal ramifications and regulations. I would say in terms of benefits, everyone's like, oh yeah, Instagram would be a winner. I actually think YouTube Shorts. If you look at the trends that are happening right now with Gen Alpha, it's YouTube Shorts, and people are like, well, we're not. Instagram for them is kind of like what you guys feel for Facebook. So it's kind of this rotating, evolving cycle. So, but then also Google is in a challenge because they are also coming in with AI, having those issues. So there may be a new platform. One platform that I feel is the one that hasn't really gotten into any controversies that I like is Pinterest. So, and they really have kind of embraced the kind of positivity of social. And I'm a little bit biased because the CEO said he was all alone. So we're glad that, you know, we guys have our color. So, you know, we're all good. So that would be my sense, right? There's always going to be something coming. You know, there's always going to be someone that wants you to do that thing. So it really depends on where you all go, but keep in mind where you go, brands are going to follow, marketers are going to follow after that, and then regulators. So that would be.
In terms of following up on that, is there anything besides the transition? Is there anything that TikTok is doing differently on our price? From any of the other two?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say that in terms of their data collection, that's kind of like them having it housed in China. That's kind of the biggest issue. But if you look at like the data collection like Facebook, Snapchat, their databases, I mean, the amount of information that we have, like these platforms have on us, and we've been willing getting them is a lot. And I actually have a friend who, his name is Dennis, he's actually in the textbook. He would come and speak to my classes, and he said, well, Karen, I was scared of students. I'm like, don't scare too much. But he would use me as kind of the example, but he could actually pinpoint through my social media what I've interacted with, when I've interacted with, how much time I've spent on the page, like all of this data that I had no idea. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at Starbucks, you know, but that's just me. But he said, you're basically interacting with databases, so you have to be mindful of that. So I think, yeah, that's the question is the TikTok stand, what's next? You know, because you would have to bring up questions of what Meta has collected on all of us, you know, Snapchat, interest on all of this and platforms. So that's kind of where I think the questions of future regulations, and we're kind of seeing that a little bit in certain states with, I think Florida passed a bill that no one under the age of 16 can have social media, where for me, I would rather see more education, more trainings instead of outright ban. And I don't think necessarily there's going to be a ban on TikTok, but I think what they're going to do is say, okay, we need to have US data housed in the US. I think that's going to be kind of the move that we're going to see, but when that's going to happen, but we'll see. So I wish I was a, you know, mind reader or, you know, could see the future, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Good question.
We do have a question up here. Yes. It says, I'm curious what the trends are in social media and professionalism. Mm-hmm. Personally, I keep my social media pages private or friends only, but what is the overall trend from an employer view with the uptick in companies using social media to promote their businesses?
That's a great question, Elizabeth. Yeah, so this has kind of changed like with crisis communication. So when I started teaching social media, everyone was like, you've got to be professional, 100%. That kind of gotten to the point where I have students that have said, Freberg, I feel like I have to act and be in a certain box and I can't move to showcase my personality, my interest. And so my answer to that question is, employers want to see that you're a human being. We don't want, like, they don't want to hire a robot. They want to hire your perspectives, your experiences, your stories, your insights, you. So what we've seen is they don't expect you to have a public Instagram account. If you're on TikTok, great, you know, they're like, you know, this is where it is. But they just say, okay, just be mindful that, that this is public. So, but the one platform they are very interested in making sure that you do have a public, facing profile is LinkedIn, I would say. And they've kind of gone away from like looking at Facebook, like, hey, that's your friends and family, that's, what you need to do. They're kind of having less focus on Twitter, X, but I would say one asterisk to that is it really depends on the industry when it comes to. So journalism, Twitter X, LinkedIn, I would say too, even with TikTok or Instagram, if you're doing any live content, reels, I know in the sports field, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then I've also seen, basically, some industries that are like, we know that your social media is private, we'll go with it. So it really depends on where you look at. So what you want to do is when you are applying for jobs, if you want to kind of establish yourself professionally, look at what the other people at the end, the company that you're applying for an interest of a job are doing. But also do what you feel is natural, but you do want to make sure that what you're doing is consistent. So for me, one of my rules of thumb is I have the same profile picture on all my accounts, except for Instagram where I'm verified that if I change my profile picture, I'll lose my verification. And that's the only reason why my profile picture is different. But at least people know that it's you. So I think LinkedIn should be open, because that's what, LinkedIn is having its influencer creator moment. So it's definitely kind of shifted gears on the professional networking side. So that is one thing that I think is really important for us to look at. But those are just my 2 cents on that. But great question, Elizabeth. So. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you
I have to, give credit to my students. They're stubborn and persistent. So I could see basically kind of the traffic and conversations even then that there were a lot of opportunities there. And I already, like for my PhD program, I joke that I was kind of the Elwoods of my cohort. I think, because I really changed my orientation coming from a fashion consumer PR internship in South Africa. And I almost said that orange was the new pink because Tennessee, has orange. Did not go over that well, but that's okay. But I felt in my gut, I thought, this is going to be something. So it is one of those things, like if you see a trend, if you feel like with AI, for example, like what about AI? Like how do I pursue that? How do I become a student of the field? And it was a risk, to kind of say, yeah, I'm going to make my career, kind of exploring this. But I figured I wanted to look at myself in the mirror saying I'm going after something that I believe in versus going and doing something traditional. Because I felt that even kind of what I was kind of seeing is be able to stand out and be different and what's going to capture attention. And I don't necessarily consider myself a cookie cutter shaped professor or person, so it was kind of a natural thing. So my big recommendation is don't try to be like everyone else. If you see something that you're interested in and passionate about, go for it. There's no limits. And I try to use this example in my class about the matrix. Has everyone seen the matrix? Okay. So I have some scenes of maybe the puppies I look like, what? I'm like, okay, homework, watch the matrix. So I basically, there is no skill. There's no limits. Like creativity and hobbies are endless, but what you have to do is show that initiative. So if I made a promise myself, I'm going to put everything that I have to make a difference, and I set goals. So my ultimate goal is to make an impact. So that was kind of my vision. This is a cool thing that combines like an interest in tech, solving issues and crises, but also opportunities. So I started small, and I remember my first talk that I ever gave on social media was for a conference room of 6 people. It was, small business owners. But then, that kind of grows into inviting talks around the world. So there's a lot of opportunities in doing something, take risks. So that's my TED talk right there. So, but yeah, don't be discouraged if someone says you can't do something. Just say, okay, watch me. That's my mentality. It's like, or what? How do you know that this is going to be bad? Just kind of question and just be critically like, what can I do to do something different and have fun at the same time. So.
Do we have any other questions from the others?
No, that's
Any
it.
other questions from the audience?
Yeah, so I was trying to remember because I had a question that just came back. So I've been thinking a lot about virtual reality, especially talking about like new tools emerging. And I feel like it's just on the bleeding edge of the possibilities right now. So do you envision like social media managers, content creators, like tailoring their content for virtual reality?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I actually have a friend at Syracuse University, Dana Jacob, who he has VR journalism classes. So he actually partnered with a community in Des Moines, giving people real world experience of what it's like being a farmer and telling stories that way. So the New York Times and NPR have really done some cool things to be able to showcase that content. So yeah, so VR and social media, that's actually been used in PR as well for media training and simulation. So basically, kind of, you have to be careful with simulations like virtual reality, because for me, like, if there was a spider at the end of the room, I'd be like, no, we're not doing that. But so VR has been kind of really embedded within the immersive experiences. And so I believe Meta does have some programs to kind of, because they're really into the metaverse and, you know, of course, their new Apple's, you know, Vision Pro. So we're definitely going to see more content that allows people to immerse and experience interactive media and content creation and consumption that way as well. So I definitely think that is absolutely going to be a part. So if you envision that it's going to be something, a trend that we talked a little bit about, kind of saying, hey, this is when we need to go. I would just immerse yourself and be a student of the field, because and share your resources, share your ideas, because there are people that don't talk about it, but you could own that space. You could be like that. So really exciting times. I love that too. I just wish that Apple Vision Pro wasn't that expensive. So that would be a sponsorship.
Okay, one last question.
So as far as being professional and keeping a good image online, do you think that can also take away from work lifestyle? Can you get easily available to everyone? So like, yes.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. So even though like I'm very active on social media, I do have limits on my phone, because when Apple started sharing your screen time, it was a lot for me. I'm like, ooh, you need a resolution time. So I actually limit myself in terms of like, because I think, again, you want to have that work-life balance, because social media can be all-encompassing, very time-consuming, and a lot. And there's a lot of risk of burnout if you spend too much time on it. So you do want to kind of enjoy the real world, you know, experience. And so I look at, you know, like Ready Player One in the book, and I kind of feel like there's a lot of really cool things. And this is me speaking as a social media professor. I love tech, but I also love the real world more. You know, there's a lot of things that happen. Like, I mean, I listen to people that I've connected with and that are good friends of mine on social. I'm like, okay, we need to be in person, because there's nothing like being in person that like will help you. So I would say in terms of work-life balance, set time limits on your app. Saying, you know what, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. You know, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of Pinterest finding all these amazing recipes, and 4 hours later I'm like, oh, or TikTok. So you want to kind of limit your time, but doing a little bit every day, you're still connected. But then doing other things allows you to brainstorm, get connected, get other ideas. And so that's the thing too, is let social media be part of your life, but not run your life. So that's kind of what I look at it. So that's why, like, that's why I have it on Showing Shepherd. It keeps me like, yeah, get off your phone, get off social media, take you to the dog park, or take like hot hobbies, because that will help you have that balance. You know, find things that bring you joy, then you can bring back and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. So you don't want to have burnout. I've seen that happen a ton.
Let's give Karen another round of applause.